Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Sunday. So August for me can be a really confusing time to fish because all the bass are going to be on bait, but some of them are going to start getting back shallow, and then some of them are still going to be grouped up out a little deeper. So I have 3 crankbaits for you that I use to cover big areas, shallow and deep, and then a couple topwaters when I'm covering large portions of the lake or small portions of the lake. And I also feel like honorable mention, a drop shot is still really key this time of year because those fish that are grouped up, you're going to need something to mop them up when they're in one little area, but they're starting to suspend and they've been pressured. So finesse, drop shot, morning dawn robo worm should be all you need on those slick, calm days. But let's talk about how I'm going to find fish because I think that's probably the most important. So I'm going to start off with a swank or a hybrid hunter. This is an L-shaped bill crankbait, completely different than any other crankbait on the market. And here's the big key with this bait is I can get this bait down to 5 feet of water. I can make super long casts and I can cover those types of spots where you have fish that are suspending. So a lot of times I throw this bait around grass and the fish aren't always going to be tucked down in the grass. A lot of times they're just chasing bait suspended above the grass. So this bait, if you watch how I fish it, long poles, it's going to keep that bait up above the grass and then it's going to come down towards the grass and it's going to have that kicking out action that entices bites when the fish have seen a lot of bait. So this is great when I'm fishing the top side of a hump or I'm fishing above brush piles. I'm fishing around cover that is still shallow, but I need something moving and shaking and doing a little bit extra than a chatterbait because at this time of the year, the fish have seen a lot of chatterbait. So the hybrid hunter or the swank is going to be a big player for me on days where the fish just are not biting topwater. Usually pretty obvious when you get out there, you're not seeing any shad flickering on top. You're not seeing any of those fish busting. You're not seeing anything really. And the swank or the 55 or the 77X in that bigger size is going to be my go-to bait when I need to find fish that are hovering around these spots. So the majority of these baits are all going to be fast moving baits. Now I do have a flipping bait that I'm going to talk about, but it's a flipping bait that I can cover a lot of water. So no matter what I'm doing, it's covering water to figure out exactly where these fish are at because they're moving around a lot day by day. They're going to use big areas, but you have to relocate them pretty much by the hour. So cranking for me is very crucial this time of year, and I like to stay in a couple different depth ranges. So I talked earlier about when I'm shallow, it's going to be a topwater, but when I'm deeper than 5 feet, I like to crank. So we'll start off with a DT6. Now I'm throwing a DT6 on 12-pound test, and I want that bait to get down to 6 feet of water, and I'm going to be burning it as fast as I can most of the time with all these crankbaits. So the DT6 is very important when I want to get to the fish that are kind of up on top or just kind of trickling off the sides of the structure. So this could be any type of flat next to a creek channel, or this could be a hump on the main river channel. But I'm checking those places that are typically going to be out in front of the creeks adjacent to the main river channel. So a lot of bait is going to be moving back into the creeks this time of year. And there's a stopping point in a window of time, typically in August, where those fish are going to feed up in those areas. And those areas also typically have a large population of fish. So there's 2 different types of lakes, and I want to touch on that real quickly before I talk about my other crankbait. You'll find lakes that have big flats, big spawning areas, typically house a lot of fish in those general areas. Those lakes typically have grass or some type of cover up on those flats, and a lot of fish will live in those areas, and then those lakes will also have a ton of dead water. So the mouths of creeks are typically always a good place to start when the fishing is tough, and August can be one of the toughest months. So I like to start around the main river channel and then work my way back into the creek. Now lakes that don't have such a defined creek channel and have big flats that are going to have a lot of spawning area where fish are going to continuously live their entire lives around, those lakes, like highland reservoirs, are going to be a great pattern lake. So you got to look for specific rock, specific little channel swings and other things and stay around that But on lakes that are flat and have areas where hundreds, if not thousands of bass can spawn, that's generally where you want to stay. And you get away from those areas, you have a lot of dead water. So we found some areas that are good. The DT6 is going to cover what's on top, and then anything that has come off the hump, has gotten back in the creek channel, is relating to that deeper water. I like a Strike King Series 5. So Rapala DT6 that dives to 6 feet, and then a Strike King Series 5 that dives to 10. I can cover all depth ranges while still fishing fast. Very important this time of year. And I will say this, you better have the right rods and line, because you are going to lose fish. The month of July is all about bass jumping out of the water. So good hooks. I like triple grip, extra wide gap hooks on my crankbaits. Make sure your hooks are sharp. This is going to be the difference between having a really good day and losing the fish right by the side of the boat. So everything we've talked about so far has been something you can cover a water with, and that is no different with this jig. So I'm going to upsize my weight of my jig and go to a 3/4 ounce. This is going to help me fish fast. So if I got to get on a big long creek channel with wood or grass, I can make as many pitches and get through that area quickly as possible. And that 3/4 is just going to get to the bottom faster. I want a reaction bite. So a lot of times these fish are going to bite it before it hits the bottom, and then 1 or 2 shakes and I'm moving to the next place. So on a lake that has grass, it's all about 50-pound braid, because I'm typically flipping this jig out into 5 to 8 feet of water. Now, if you are fishing shallower, like 2 foot of water, then you will downside. A 3/4 is going to be too much for those fish to really get it good when they go to bite it, and you're going to lose fish. But if you're fishing a little bit deeper cover, that 4 foot and deeper, a 3/4 ounce or a 5/8 ounce jig is great. Now I do downsides. This is a Beast Coast Little Magnum. This is a finesse tungsten jig with a big strong hook that I can still put it on a full-size flipping stick with 50-pound braid, small profile. So little trailers, keeping my bait small, but I'm still moving quickly and fishing fast. So it's a slow technique, but it's something that I can really cover water with. So once that water gets above 70 degrees, I'm typically going to be throwing topwater anytime I'm shallow. So I got 2 different types of topwater that I'm going to fish in 2 completely different situations. So if I'm fishing something big, I need to cover water, there could be bass ambushing shad really from anywhere. It's going to be a big topwater walking bait or a pencil popper style bait. This is a Berkley Cane Walker 115. It's the bigger version, something I can make super long casts with. And this is typically structure shallow places. So points and humps that are near deep water. But I know my bait's going to be appealing to those fish that are shallower than 5 feet. Talked about the crankbait earlier. If I get deeper off the side of them, that's where those crankbaits come in. But when I'm fishing those structure spots, I'm seeing shad blowing up, or bass blowing up on shad rather, up on the tops of those humps, then this is something that I can cover a ton of water with, and I can fish it super fast. Fish come up schooling, I'm ready to go with that bait. Now, a lot of times you will see fish using short pockets in these hotter months. So we talked about patterning fish on lakes that don't have a lot of likable offshore structure, shallow and deep for the fish to get on. This is another one. So if you had to run bluegill beds, a prop bait is a really good option. Now this is a small Express from Academy prop bait. I think the feathered tail is crucial, but what I'll tell you about this is when the fishing just isn't going on, you know, maybe they're not pulling any current and you have to slide off into a pocket, a lot of times those fish are going to move from that main river channel into those short pockets on the days where they're not pulling a lot of current. They're going to suspend and they're going to be looking for something to eat, but it's going to be a slow, methodical bite. So a lot of times I'll go and fish an entire pocket looking for one bite. And a lot of times you will see that those bigger fish on the lake have just kind of drifted off the main river. They're close to it. They haven't went too far, but they've kind of just suspended. They're lethargic. They're probably looking for some shade, some cooler water with more oxygen, but their metabolism is still sped up. The hotter months, the hotter water, they still have to eat. So they're looking for bluegill or shad. And this prop bait is something that I can fish super slow, get them to react, keep it in their face, and it's a great way to fish shallow. So that's basically the whole rundown on what I'm doing in August. I'm looking a lot of the times for bait. I'm looking for bass around the bait, and then when it slicks off, it gets tough, you can change it up. But most of the time it's cranking, it's top water, and some type of flipping technique. Try that if you're going bass fishing in the month of August. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.